Sarah, the three people who are most important in this whole process are Senators Murkowski, Collins, and Flake. This morning, two of those senators, Flake and Collins, were extremely upset about how the president described Christine Blasey Ford at that rally in Mississippi. Knowing how sensitive this issue is and how important it would be if the FBI investigation shows no other compelling evidence to keep Judge Kavanaugh from the court, that these people need to be comfortable with voting for him. Why did the president say what he did last night in the way that he said it?
The president was stating the facts, and frankly, facts that were included in Special Prosecutor Rachel Mitchell's report. He was stating facts that were given during Dr. Ford's testimony, and the Senate has to make a decision based on those facts and whether or not they see Judge Kavanaugh to be qualified to hold the position on the Supreme Court. Every single word Judge Kavanaugh has said has been picked apart. Every single word, second by second, of his testimony has been picked apart. Yet if anybody says anything about the accusations that have been thrown against them, that's totally off limits and outrageous. This entire process has been a disgrace, and the only reason that it's been that way is because Senate Democrats didn't do this the way that it should have been done, and they circumvented the entire system. And frankly, they've undermined our entire judicial branch by the way that they've acted and the inappropriateness of which they've conducted themselves.
Pointing out
Sorry, go ahead.
Pointing out inconsistencies in testimony is one thing, but the tone with which the president did it last night clearly had an effect on two key swing votes for his nomination. Is the president concerned that he may have put those votes in danger by doing what he did last night?
I don't think so. The president's very confident in his nominee, as he stated time and time again, and we expect the Senate to vote, and we hope they do that soon. Zeke.
Two quick questions, and then I'll come back to Kavanaugh. First, is the White House having a response to the reported mailings of Bryson to Pentagon officials and also the president? Has the president been briefed on this investigation? Any updates?
The president's certainly been made aware, but as we stated yesterday, I would refer you to the U.S. Secret Service to respond to those
Do you have any update
letters.
on the president's meeting with Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein that was supposed to be held last week? Is the president still on confidence with him?
Again, we don't have any updates on that front. If there's a meeting, we'll let you know. But at this point, they continue to work together and both show up every day and do their jobs.
Sorry, just one more back on Kavanaugh. You said a couple of minutes ago you criticized Democrats for undermining Dr. Ford's privacy. And the way the president referred to her last night, are you there trying to have it both ways by sort of attacking Democrats for doing something that wasn't in your interest, and then the president was out on stage last night essentially mocking her testimony for
Not at all. We're pointing out the hypocrisy. Again, none of this would be taking place if Democrats had done this in a normal order and not exploited Dr. Ford and attacked Judge Kavanaugh in such a public manner. All of this could have been handled completely differently, and the Senate Democrats hold all of the responsibility for that process. Josh?
The New York Times reported yesterday that the president had engaged in outright tax fraud throughout the 90s with suspect tax schemes and, basically getting more money from his parents than he said, using thousands of documents. You rebutted the story. Can you explain what is inaccurate about that story, if there's anything that is actually inaccurate about it?
It's a totally false attack based on an old recycled news story. I'm not going to sit and go through every single line of a very boring 14,000-word story. The only thing, I will say one thing the article did get right was that it showed that the president's father actually had a great deal of confidence in him. In fact, the president brought his father into a lot of deals, and they made a lot of money together, so much so that his father went on to say that everything he touched turned to gold. The president's lawyer addressed some of the specific claims and walked through how the allegations of fraud and tax evasion are 100% false and highly defamatory. There was no fraud or tax evasion by anyone. He went on much further, and I would encourage you to read every word of his statement, which completely undercuts the accusations made by the New York Times.
Are the president's taxes still under audit?
I know that a number of his taxes are still under audit.
From the 90s and early 2000s?
I'd have to check and get back to you.
Was the
Cecilia?
White House willing to provide any of his tax returns?
I'm not aware of any plans to do so. Cecilia?
Thanks, Sarah. It was just a couple of days ago that the president called Christine Blasey Ford a very credible witness, a very credible, very compelling. But now he's basically making her out to be a liar. So which is it?
Certainly, the testimony by Dr. Ford was compelling, but you can't make this decision based on emotion. It has to be based on fact. They have to determine what the facts are of this case. That's one of the reasons that they asked and begged for the FBI and delayed a hearing vote is so they could get more facts on this case. We expect the FBI to turn those facts over to the Senate and they can make a determination based on that. That's all we're asking for.
You said that he was stating the facts at that campaign rally, but this was so much more than stating the facts. This was a full-scale campaign rally assault on a woman who says she's a victim of sexual assault. What do you get out of that? Is that to help Kavanaugh's nomination? Is this to rally the base? Is this going to help with the midterms? Like, what's the point in doing that?
Again, I dispute that it wasn't anything other than the president stating facts. In fact, facts that were laid out in the prosecutor's memo that she put forward to the Senate. Each of the things that he called out were things that were laid out in that memo. Sager.
Thanks, Sarah. There's conflicting feelings on Capitol Hill right now over whether the FBI investigation into Judge Kavanaugh should be made public or not. Does the White House commit to transparency on this effort and let the American people see the full reign of this investigation regardless of the findings?
Look, we've been very open and transparent through the process. The president's the one that ordered the FBI investigation to take place and has allowed the Senate to actually control and dictate the terms and scope of the investigation. We're continuing to do that and allowing the FBI to actually do what it is they do best, and that's their jobs, to do this investigation.
Another question for you, if I may, on declassification, since we haven't spoken in a while. The president has said that...
I missed you guys too.
The president said that he would refer the declassification process to the DOJ Inspector General, but he wants to see that happen quickly. What does quickly mean? Are we going to see these documents before the midterm elections?
I'm not going to walk through a timeline, but we're continuing to work through that process, and when we have an update on it, we'll certainly let you know. Alex.
Sir, why did you say earlier this year that Michael Cohen was acting on his own in an arbitration proceeding to prevent Stormy Daniels from doing a television interview when the president actually directed that move?
As you know, I'm not going to get into a back and forth. That's an issue for the president's outside counsel. I direct you there to answer it. John?
Thank you, Sarah. Two brief questions. First, the impact and meaning of the president's comments in Mississippi notwithstanding, it is a fact that Senators Collins, Murkowski, Flake, and Manchin are the undecided votes critical to the nomination. Are there any plans for the president to call any of them between now and next week and make one final pitch? Perhaps explain his remarks a little bit more.
I'm not aware of a specific scheduled call, but we've certainly been in close contact with a number of members, and we'll continue to do so up until the vote. Blake? Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask was two of the president's early supporters in the House, Collins of New York and Duncan Hunter of California, are running under indictment. There are rules of the National Republican Congressional Committee barring support for members who are under indictment. Does the president still support both of them for re-election?
I can't get into a lot of details, one for Hatch Act violation, but also with an ongoing investigation. I'm not going to be able to comment on that front here.
Sarah, thank you. As this briefing was beginning, Bloomberg put out an article about the FBI background investigation, and Bloomberg is reporting right now that the FBI hasn't interviewed Judge Kavanaugh or Dr. Ford because the White House hasn't given investigators clear authority to do so. Is that indeed the case?
As we've said several times, the president's indicated that whoever the FBI deems necessary to interview, he's fine with that, but he's also asked that the Senate be the ones that determine the scope of what they need in order to make a decision on whether they vote Kavanaugh up or down. I can also tell you that both Judge Kavanaugh and Dr. Ford were questioned in the most public way possible by the members of the Senate, who are ultimately the ones who have to make the determination on whether or not they vote for Judge Kavanaugh. If they had additional questions for either one of them, they had a time and an opportunity certainly to ask those.
Does the White House believe it is appropriate then? Does the White House believe it is appropriate for
Again,
these
we're
two?
going to allow the
I know you
Senate to
say
make the
that
determination of the scope. Aisha. Aisha, go ahead.
Thank you. So President Trump talked a lot yesterday about this issue of being concerned about men being guilty before being thought guilty before proven innocent, and this idea of due process. But in the past, with the Central Park Five, he put out an ad basically calling for the death penalty before they had been found convicted, and even after they were exonerated, he still basically said that they may be guilty. And even as president, he has talked about presided over rallies where people say lock her up, talking about Hillary Clinton. So I guess, is there a disconnect between when the president is interested in due process for some, but not for others?
Not at all. The president actually encouraged the Senate to hear Dr. Ford's testimony in the same way he encouraged them to hear Judge Kavanaugh's. He is simply stating the fact that we are a country of law and order. We are a country that still believes that you're innocent until proven guilty, and we want to see that process go through in its entirety, and it should be on a fair playing field. That's simply the only point he's making.